Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's upcoming visit to Australia is expected to strengthen the India-Australia partnership. Talks are likely to focus on trade, investment, education, tourism and regional security. With global geopolitical challenges continuing, both sides are also expected to discuss closer cooperation under the Quad. We spoke to High Commissioner of Australia to India, Philip Green, about the key priorities, opportunities and what this visit could mean for the next phase of bilateral ties. Let's listen in.
Well, a very important visit. I mean, Prime Minister Modi is one of the most important global leaders for us. India is a key partner across any number of domains, and Prime Minister Albanese looks forward to his friend coming to meet him across the Indian Ocean. Look, I think there are three key drivers for our bilateral relationship. We are strategically aligned at a time where the world is less predictable and our region suffers from some serious question marks. We are economically complementary. That is to say, Australia produces the sort of things that India needs for the next phase of its economic development. And the third thing is that we now have a massive Indian diaspora, more than 1 million people of Indian origin who make Australia home. They make a big contribution to our multicultural country. And so they, amongst others, will be looking forward to seeing Prime Minister Modi on our side.
Right. So if I were to ask you, what are the key expectations in terms of the outcomes? You've mentioned mobility, you've mentioned trade, you've mentioned, global geopolitical challenges also that we're facing. And of course, security is something that you've also mentioned. So if I were to ask you the outcomes that you're anticipating and expecting.
Well, nice try, but I'm going to leave the outcomes to the leaders. But, I think you can expect the outcomes will follow those three great domains. I think you can expect to see us take our partnership to a new level of activity. I do expect you can expect the leaders to identify where they want to go next with this important partnership. And I think the other thing that you will see is the genuine life and excitement of this relationship, especially at the human level.
Absolutely, and that's going to be a key part of the ties going forward as well. But if I were to specifically talk about one aspect, that is trade, right? Trade is, has become even more important since last year, and we do have an ECTA pact. Australia has an ECTA pact with India. It came up in 2022. I want to first ask you, where have things moved on that front in terms of the synergies that have been created between both the sides? What has it meant for Australia in terms of the outcomes? If you could talk a bit about that.
Well, first of all, that is causing our bilateral trade to be very buoyant indeed. So India's exports to the world have grown by 40% in the last 5 years. That sounds good, right? But India's exports to Australia have grown by 200%, yes. 5 times faster than India's export to the rest of the world. And Australia also is benefiting in similar ways. So we have a very buoyant bilateral trading relationship. We in Australia have identified 4 what we call super highways of growth between Australia and India. That's education, that's tourism, that's the green energy supply chain, and that's agri-food. And across those 4 domains and in others, but those are the leading ones, we're seeing a huge amount of momentum between us. We're also looking for the next phase of our free trade agreement, which would be a comprehensive economic agreement, and negotiators are closely in touch on that, and we're looking forward to progress towards that.
Right. You mentioned very important points about food security, about technologies, and of course the ceCA agreement, like you rightly state, that there are conversations happening on that front. But High Commissioner, if you could give us a sense of where the conversations are and what are the leaders sort of thinking, what is the Australian leadership's thinking on that very pact, and how close is it to sort of getting closed?
Well, I'll leave the leaders to identify where they think that is. But let me say this. This visit happens at a particular time in global economic developments when both Australia and India have been affected by the Gulf crisis and the absence of movement through the Strait of Hormuz, which hopefully we're coming through now. But that has thrown attention for us on our energy partnership. Right. Australia benefits from energy exports from India. India benefits from coal and liquid natural gas from Australia. And I think that's an area where the leaders will look, given the crucial situation that we find ourselves in.
Absolutely, very rightly said. Energy is going to be a key focus of the ties, but where is it taken from where we are in terms of, exports? Going beyond LNG and coal, that remains to be seen. But what's the conversation, on uranium, Excellency, if I may ask you?
Well, I'll leave that to leaders. As you know, we've had a safeguards agreement on nuclear supplies for 12 years. And I think the leaders will have some discussion over that. But beyond that, we think that the bilateral energy security conversations are very important at this point where all of us are focused on supply chains. And let me put it this way. Australia sees in India a reliable partner, strategically and for trade. And so if we can strengthen the way in which we do business on energy, that's going to be good for both of us.
Absolutely. And, there is momentum in trade that's currently needed, and there is an opportunity for growth, particularly with respect to trade as well. Just one final question, Excellency, and this is on the significance of the Quad. We did see Foreign Minister Penny Wong was in India. There was a conversation around that as well. In fact, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, also stated that Quad is important. But where do you see that dialogue moving, given the fact that it does seem that strategic priorities of some countries, they seem to have changed?
I think there's strong momentum behind the Quad. I was here for the meeting of the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting chaired by Dr. Jaishankar. Those four foreign ministers have a very closely aligned perspective on regional security, and particularly where the Quad goes. The Quad's in very good health. This visit won't focus so much on quadrilateral or trilateral issues. We're very much focused on the bilateral, and for us, defence and security links between Australia and India in and of themselves are very important, and there'll be a lot of discussion about that.